Hi, this is all the chapters of history. Have you ever heard the land of silk? This expression refers to China. China has the oldest history in Asia. China, which today has the world's #1 population, has passed a colorful and dynamic history consisting of 54 ethnic minorities, including the Han Chinese. Then how much do you know about Chinese history? Let's begin all the chapters of China history. The first country in Chinese history is the Shang Dynasty. In China, Xia Dynasty is said to be the first country in Chinese history, but it is common to recognize Xia Dynasty as a mythical country. The first recognized country in Chinese history is the Shang Dynasty, which we call the Yellow River Civilization today. King Tang, who was in charge of the Yellow River's waterworks project, established the Shang Dynasty by setting up a town in Shangqiu City, Henan Province today. The artifact representing the Shang Dynasty is the oracle bone script, which refers to the record of performing a ritual and engraving message from the sky on the shell of a turtle and the bones of a beast. The letters engraved in the oracle bones are different from today's Chinese characters, but the grammar is the same as the grammar of today's Chinese and looks a lot like the Chinese characters, so they are recognized as direct ancestor of Chinese characters. After the King Tang, the Shang Dynasty rapidly declined due to dispute over the succession of the throne. Pangung, the 18th king of the Shang Dynasty, moved capital to Yinxu, a place in Anyang City, Henan Province, to rejuvenate the Shang Dynasty. Yinxu is the area where the remains of Shang Dynasty are excavated the most. But King Zhou, the last king of the Shang Dynasty, was so tyrannical that brutally killed his loyalities, and he was infatuated with a woman called Daji that he often led a promiscuous, luxurious life. When the politics and morals of the Shang Dynasty collapsed, other tribes under the control of the Shang Dynasty began to rebel. Jifa, who was leading the Zhou tribe under the control of the Shang Dynasty, gathered tribes that rebelled against the Shang Dynasty and overthrew the Shang Dynasty army in the Battle of Mue. The last king of the Shang Dynasty, King Zhou, jumped into the fire and died on his own. Jifa was crowned King Wu and founded the Zhou Dynasty. A very important task remained for King Wu. He had to offer official recognition of distinguished service to the lords who helped him. So feudalism was implemented. Feudalism was a system in which the emperor distributes a specific territory to the feudal lords, and the feudal lords' autonomy was more exercised in that territory. The direct land of the Zhou Dynasty's emperor itself was not that wide. The feudal lords had to regularly pay tributes to the emperor of the Zhou Dynasty. Tributing to the emperor meant that they were members of the Yellow River Civilization, and whether they were governed by the emperor or not was a matter of whether they belonged to a world with an advanced culture. Therefore, feudal lords who paid tribute to the emperor regarded themselves as beings of superior and great civilization and despised the people who did not pay tribute as barbarians. This dichotomous worldview of the Chinese, which divides the world into great beings and inferior barbarians, is called Sinocentrism. King You, the last king of the Zhou Dynasty, fell for a woman named Bao Xi, who had never smiled. Once, the feudal lords gathered their troops and started preparing for battle, thinking barbarians invaded after seeing signal fire. But it was the error signal. Didn't Bao Xi laugh out loud that King You had never seen in his life? King You, who wanted to make Bao Xi laugh more, raised the wrong signal fire repeatedly, even though there was no any invasion. Feudal lords gradually became tired. Then, the barbarians really invaded the capital of the Zhou Dynasty and signal fire went up, but the feudal lords, who interpreted it as King You's prank again, did not gather troops. Eventually, the capital of the Zhou Dynasty fell, and King You was captured and executed by barbarians. King You's eldest son King Ping moved capital to the east city Luoyang. The Zhou Dynasty that changed its capital was not the country that it used to be. The emperor only existed symbolically, and the actual Chinese civilization was divided by rising feudal lords. Therefore, based on the moving capital of the Zhou dynasty, the history of Zhou dynasty is classified as the Western Zhou and the Eastern Zhou, which is the starting point of the Spring and Autumn period. The Spring and Autumn period began in 770 BC. At the beginning of the Spring and Autumn period, there were about 180 feudal states. Each feudal state competed against the invasion of barbarians to support the emperor of the Zhou dynasty. The biggest topic was which lord among the 180 feudal states would maintain the order of Chinese civilization by supplementing the emperor of the Zhou dynasty. Throughout the Spring and Autumn period, there were 5 feudal lords who achieved this hegemony, and these 5 lords are called the 5 hegemons. The 180 feudal states were finally arranged into 7 countries. These 7 countries are called the 7 warring states, and from this time on, the warring states period began. The warring states period was very different from the Spring and Autumn period. During the warring states period, the Zhou dynasty was completely destroyed. Unlike the Spring and Autumn period, which sought coexistence based on the order of supplementing the emperor of Zhou dynasty, from warring states period, the concept of destruction to eliminate other country was introduced. The Iron Age also started from the warring states period in China. The scale of the war grew beyond comparison with the Spring and Autumn periods. Each of the 7 warring states embraced a variety of ideas in the process of self-development. The ideas that emerged throughout the Spring and Autumn period and the warring states period are called the 100 schools of thought. To introduce some ideas, first, Kongzhu's Confucianism, emphasizing morality at a time when humanity was lost due to war. Second, Mozu's Mohism, insisting on the theory of seeking peace and arguing that war should only be conducted for the purpose of defense. Third, Lao Tzu and Zhang Zhu's Taoism, pursuing extreme idealism by doing nothing. Fourth, Sun Tzu's School of the Military, studying wars academically. Fifth, legalism, insisting on strong rule of law. Among the 7 warring states, the Qin dynasty accepted the legalism through Shangyang, Han Fei, and Li Si. Qin dynasty finally united the warring states period era by destroying the remaining 6 countries in 221 BC. The emperor of the Qin dynasty who ended the warring states period was that famous Qin Shi Huang. The Qin dynasty was China's first unified dynasty, and Qin Shi Huang was the first to refer to the emperor in China. After the unification of the physical territories, Qin Shi Huang implemented an integrated policy by unifying weight, currency, and letters nationwide. Qin Shi Huang's greatest achievement was that he made the state maintain beyond unification. China created an empire 2,000 years ago by Qin Shi Huang, so China could be reunified no matter how much it was split. Then Qin Shi Huang drove the nomadic Huns of the north into the Gobi Desert and built the Great Wall to prevent the invasion of the Huns. So the Great Wall is a reference point for nomadic and agriculture, and it's also the boundary between Chinese civilization and non-Chinese civilizations. But the current Great Wall is not how it looks during the Qin Shi Huang's era. On the other hand, Qin Shi Huang was also a tyrant who forced extreme rule of law. When Confucian scholars took issue with Qin Shi Huang's tyranny, Qin Shi Huang burned all Confucian books and buried Confucian scholars alive. And to live forever, Qin Shi Huang spent a huge amount of nation's financial to find the elixir. Finally, after failing to find the elixir, Qin Shi Huang built an overwhelming tomb to enjoy eternal power even after death. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang was more like an underground palace. He made a military-style terracotta army that modeled after a real person's face and followed the armor and the organization of the Qin dynasty army at that time. He also built his new palace in 690 meters east and west, 150 meters south and north, named Abangung Palace. Qin Shi Huang pointed to his eldest son as his successor, but unique Zhao Gao manipulated Qin Shi Huang's will. Zhao Gao killed Qin Shi Huang's eldest son and crowned Qin Shi Huang's second son as Emperor Qin Ershi. The people could not stand the cruel government and caused a rebellion. Past 7 warring states, aristocrats and royalties from all over the country rose up and resurrected their countries. Of these, Xiangwi from Chu Dynasty collapsed the capital of the Qin Dynasty in 206 BC. Xiangwu exterminated the Qin's royal family and burned the capital. Abanggong Palace took 100 days to be burnt. After the fall of Qin Dynasty, it was Xiangwi of the Chu Dynasty who conquered the mainland of China. Xiangwi was the most powerful man in Chinese history. However, the public sentiment did not support Xiangwi because he had dubious personality and his temper was brutal. The public sentiment was rather directed at Liu Bang of the Han Dynasty. Most of the lords across China also sided with Liu Bang. Liu Bang of the Han Dynasty and Xiangwi of the Chu Dynasty had a battle to occupy China, and it is said that the confrontation between the two was called Chu-Han contention. Liu Bang won against Xiangwi in 202 BC, having competent subjects such as Zhang Liang and Han Xin. After losing the battle, Xiangwi killed himself. Liu Bang of the Han Dynasty reunified China. But China had another troublesome adversary. It was the Huns, a nomadic people of the north in the Gobi Desert. The Huns attacked and looted the Han Dynasty from time to time. The Han Dynasty tried to prevent the Huns several times, but in terms of combat power, the agriculture could not match for the nomadic people. But Emperor Wu of Han, the 7th emperor of the Han Dynasty, the representative conquest monarch of the Chinese history, embarked on a large conquest to the Huns. With the great commanders such as Wei Qing and Hu Chubing, Emperor Wu of Han went on conquest to the Huns for 7 times in about 20 years from 133 BC to 190 BC. They drove the Huns beyond the Gobi Desert to what is now the Mongolian grasslands. Emperor Wu of Han was looking for an ally to join him during the Huns' conquest. Emperor Wu of Han sent Zhang Qian as envoy to Central Asia in the west to find an ally. Zhang Qian visited various countries in Central Asia, promoting the Han Dynasty and established diplomatic relations with the Han. Through this path, pioneered by Zhang Qian, Central Asia and China had been constantly interacting for hundreds of years since then, and silk was the most valuable item at that time. In the 19th century, a German geographer, Ferdinando von Richthofen, named this road the Silk Road. After the Huns' conquest, Emperor Wu of Han conquered Vietnam and destroyed Korea's Gojoseon. Wang Mang, the family from maternal relatives of Emperor, disposed the Emperor of the Han Dynasty in 8 AD and temporarily founded the Xin Dynasty. In 23 AD, Liu Shu, a member of the Han royal family, toppled the Xin Dynasty, ending the Xin Dynasty in only 15 years. Liu Shu was crowned Emperor Guangwu of Han and resurrected the Han Dynasty. Based on the history of the Xin Dynasty for 15 years, the history of the Han Dynasty is divided into the former Han and the later Han. During Emperor Zhang of Han, the 3rd emperor of the later Han Dynasty, Ban Chao embarked on a western expedition and conquered more than 50 Central Asian countries. Ban Chao further developed and expanded the Silk Road to reach Persia and Iran and India. The Han Dynasty had a chronic social problem. There were so many things all over the country. Over time, the things became more influential in their respective areas, and in some cases, they grew into warlords. Emperors at the later Han were incompetent, leading to a power struggle between eunuchs and emperors' maternal relatives. People's livelihoods were destroyed, resulting in large-scale riots such as the Yellow Turban Rebellion. The Han Dynasty's government could not afford to suppress the Yellow Turban Rebellion on its own, and the government used the power of warlords and thanes. In this process, the power of warlords and thanes became stronger. In 189, eunuchs called 10 attendants assassinated Emperor's maternal relative He Jin. He Jin's subordinate Wen Shao entered the palace and killed the 10 attendants. However, a warlord Dong Zhuo suddenly appeared, taking control of the palace with soldiers, and established an emperor called Emperor Xian of Han at his disposal. Dong Zhuo was assassinated by his adopted son Lu Bu, and Dong Zhuo's subordinates competed to succeed Dong Zhuo. Cao Cao appeared to subdue the remnants of Dongzhuo and assist Emperor Xian of Han. Cao Cao conquered the north, defeating the warlords such as Yuanshu, Lu Bu, and Liu Bei one after another, and eventually defeated Yuan Shao, who was the largest warlords in the north of China. Cao Cao was trying to advance to the south of China then, but Liu Bei, who stayed in Jingzhou in China's central region after being defeated by Cao Cao, allied with the warlord Sun Quan at the right area of China at the suggestion of Zhuge Liang. In 208, Liu Bei-Sun Quan alliance thwarted Cao Cao's advance into the south by winning a great victory in the Red Wall War. Since Red Wall War, Liu Bei occupied China's central Jingzhou and China's southwest Sichuan. After Cao Cao's death in 220, Cao Cao's son Cao Pi abdicated the last emperor Xian of Han and ascended to the throne on its own, forming the Wei dynasty. Liu Bei became emperor in 221 and founded the Shu dynasty, saying he would succeed the Han dynasty. In 229, Sun Quan at the east side of China also became emperor and founded the Wu dynasty. This was the three kingdoms of China. Zhuge Liang from the Shu dynasty went on northern conquest to the Wei dynasty for 5 times, but all failed. In 263, the Shu dynasty was destroyed by the Wei dynasty. In 266, the Sima clan took power inside the Wei dynasty and overthrew the Wei dynasty. Sima Yan was crowned and established the Jin dynasty. And in 280, the Wu dynasty was also destroyed by Jin, and so the Jin dynasty unified the three kingdoms. But as a unified dynasty, the Jin dynasty didn't last long. Inside the Jin dynasty, there was a civil war between the royal family over the succession of the throne. In the process, royal families used nomadic peoples as mercenaries. Finally, the capital of the Jin dynasty was taken by the Huns, who made the city into a sea of fire. The Jin dynasty seemed to be destroyed, but in 318, a man from pastoral family of the Jin dynasty re-established the Jin dynasty in Nanjing, southern China. Based on the resurrection of the Jin dynasty in Nanjing, the Jin dynasty is classified as Western Jin, which occupied all of China, and Eastern Jin, which ruled only the southern region. Then who ruled the northern part of the China? In the north of China, 5 nomadic barbarians, the Huns, the Xianbeis, the Jie's, the Dis, and the Qiangs, founded a total of 16 countries in about 130 years. So this 130 years is called the period of 16 kingdoms. In the south of China, on the other hand, 4 dynasties of the Han Chinese followed after Eastern Jin. The era which 16 kingdoms established in the north of China and Han Chinese continued their dynasties in the south of China is called the Northern and Southern dynasties. The Northern dynasty of China was unified by a country called Northern Wei, which was founded by the Xianbei people. The Northern Wei made Luoyang its capital, and the 7th Emperor Xiaowen of Northern Wei implemented an active Sinicization policy. Sinicization policy meant that nomadic peoples actively embraced the culture of the Han Chinese culture. As a part of Sinicization policy, Emperor Xiaowen of Northern Wei banned their nomadic clothes, nomadic tradition, nomadic language to fix them all to Han Chinese, and encouraged the unification of the Xianbei and Han Chinese, educating aristocratic children to Han Chinese style. The Sinicization policy of Emperor Xiaowen later created the Gualun Group, a ruling group mixed with the Xianbei and Han Chinese. Gualun Group was warlord groups from Wuchang military base, among the 6 military bases installed in strategic locations in the north. Both the imperial family and their maternal relatives of the Sui and Tang dynasties later were all from this Gualun Group. In 534, the Northern Wei eventually split back into infighting. It was Sui dynasty which cleaned up this infighting and reintegrated the north of China. And the Sui dynasty unified all mainland of China, conquering Southern dynasty in 589, ending 100 years of division. Emperor Wen of Sui, the first emperor of the Sui dynasty who unified China, turned his attention to Korea's Goguryeo. Emperor Wen of Sui forced Goguryeo to pay tribute, but Goguryeo refused, and Goguryeo launched a preemptive attack. Emperor Yang of Sui, who became the second emperor by assassinating his father Emperor Wen, is a representative tyrant in Chinese history. He lost his popularity and destroyed the economy by carrying out unreasonable civil engineering work to create a grand canal connecting the rivers of the north and south of China. In addition, in 612, Emperor Yang of Sui mobilized 1.13 million troops, an unbroken record since World War I, to destroy Goguryeo, but failed by defeating the Battle of Seosu by Goguryeo general Uljimundeok. Countless riots occurred nationwide, and Emperor Yang of Sui was killed by his subordinates. After the fall of the Sui dynasty, warlords born again in various parts of the country, but it was the Tang dynasty that cleaned up the chaos in China and reclaimed the mainland. The emperor who symbolizes the Tang dynasty is the second emperor Taizong Li Shimin. Emperor Taizong of Tang cultivated a cavalry-centered force for about 3 years. Then in 630, he destroyed the nomadic country Turk's empire of the Mongolian grasslands. After the fall of Turk's empire, all nomadic tribes in the grasslands were subjugated to Emperor Taizong of Tang. The nomadic tribesmen offered the title to Emperor Taizong of Tang. Tengri Khan meant Khan of Heaven. Khan is a name given to a nomadic leader that conquered nomadic peoples. So it meant Emperor Taizong of Tang got the title of unified supreme ruler of the nomadic and agricultural worlds that are really hard to find in Chinese history. Emperor Taizong of Tang is also considered to be one of the most outstanding monarchs in Chinese legal history. He completed the Tang dynasty's law system, which gave a huge political impact on Korea and Japan later. The reign of Emperor Taizong of Tang, who achieved a prosperous order of the law in a strong centralized system, is called Reign of Zhongguan. However, the only policy that Emperor Taizong of Tang failed, the stain that reduced his reputation to the abyss, was the conquest to Goguryeo in Korea. Emperor Taizong of Tang, who failed to conquer Goguryeo, died shortly after, leaving his will not to take Goguryeo again. Yet, Emperor Taizong's son, Emperor Gaozong of Tang, destroyed Baekje in 660 and Goguryeo in 668 after forming an alliance with Silla in Korea. The Tang dynasty tried to destroy Silla also, but in 676, the Silla of Korea defeated the Tang dynasty. In 698, Goguryeo descendants founded Balhae in Manchuria so that the Tang dynasty could not occupy Manchuria and any part of the Korean peninsula. The Tang dynasty had the only female emperor in Chinese history named Wu Zetian. Wu Zetian was active in recruiting even foreigners, regardless of nationality, skin color, or where the person came from. She watched only ability. That laid the foundation for the Tang dynasty to become culturally prosperous. The Tang dynasty reached its peak in the early 8th century during the reign of Emperor Xianzong of Tang, the 6th emperor. The ministers who led the government of Emperor Xianzong of Tang were all outstanding and competent. Commerce of Tang dynasty was very developed and goods were distributed nationwide through the Grand Canal created in the past during Emperor Yang of Sui. The merchants of Islam and Central Asia actively entered the Tang through the Silk Road, and Tang government also encouraged maritime trade. The capital of Tang dynasty, Chang'an, was an international metropolis like today's New York City. There were so many different cultures and religions coexisting. Emperor Xianzong of Tang carried out a Central Asia conquest through Gao Xianzhi, a former Goguryeo refugee. In 750, Gao Xianzhi made his way to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, where the Abbasid dynasty of Islam was also expanding its power. In 751, the Abbasid dynasty of Islam and the Tang dynasty of Buddhism clashed in Talas, Kazakhstan. The Tang was defeated at the Battle of Talas, which led to the Islamification of Central Asia. The Battle of Talas has another great historical significance in the history of East-West exchanges. Through Tang prisoners, Chinese paper techniques spread to the Middle East and further to Europe. Although Emperor Xianzong of Tang enjoyed the highest period of the Tang dynasty, after he fell in love with Yang Guifei, one of the four great beauties of China, he kept away from affairs and the Tang Dynasty went down the road. Yang Guifei's luxurious life was so enormous and her brother Yang Guozhong also engaged in corruption. Emperor Xunzong of Tang set up military camp commandery at key sites in each border area, and the commandery's director was called the military commissioner. An Lushan, one of these military commissioners, revolted against Yang Guifei and her brother Yang Guizhuang in 755. Emperor Xunzong of Tang and Yang Guifei fled the capital Chang'an to Sichuan province. Even Yang Guozhong was executed and Yang Guifei was forced to kill herself. An Lushan had no intention of stopping the rebellion. In place of the evacuated Emperor Xunzong of Tang, his son, Emperor Suzong of Tang, suppressed the rebellion, but the power of the regular army of Tang Dynasty alone was not enough. So Emperor Suzong of Tang brought the Uyghurs as mercenaries. The An Lushan rebellion, which happened in 755, was not suppressed until 8 years later in 763. Since then, the power of central government of Tang Dynasty had declined more and more, and military commissioners had rose all over the country, waging a civil war. In 875, the direct cause of the collapse of the Tang Dynasty, the rebellion of Huang Chao, broke out. The Tang Dynasty wasn't functioning as a state to the point where even the Tang people supported or joined Huang Chao's rebellion. In 884, 9 years after the rebellion, the military commissioner Zhu Wen suppressed the rebellion of Huang Chao. But Zhu Wen also deposed the Tang Emperor in 907, and the Tang Dynasty ended. After the fall of the Tang Dynasty, China was once again divided by the military commissioners setting up their own countries in their own places. The period of division in China after the fall of the Tang Dynasty is called Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms period. Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms period was the period when 5 dynasties were established one after another in the Central Plain, the main stage of Chinese history, and a total of 10 local governments were established in each province. While China was divided, the Khitan founded their own country around the Liao River, and the Khitan seized 16 states, including Beijing and Tianjin, and declared the name of the country Liao. In 960, the Song Dynasty was founded in China. Song Dynasty unified the era of 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. Emperor Taizong of Song, the founder of the Song Dynasty, was also a former military commissioner. In order for the Song Dynasty not to be divided again, military commissioners should not exist, and Emperor Taizong of Song suspended all the authority of the military commissioners. Emperor Taizong of Song advocated scholarism to foster bureaucrats, not warlords or military commissioners. This led to the disappearance of warlords or military commissioners, but there was also a side effect that the military power of the country was severely weakened. Song Dynasty fought against the Liao of the Khitan to retake the Beijing area, but always defeated. In 1115, the Jurchens of Manchuria founded the Qin Dynasty, and in 1125, they became the new masters of the north, destroying the Liao Dynasty of the Khitan. The Song Dynasty asked for the return of the Beijing area, but when the Jin Dynasty refused, war broke out. In 1127, the Jin Dynasty of Jurchens captured Kaifeng, the capital of the Song Dynasty, and sent the emperor of the Song and other imperial families to the Jin Dynasty. It seemed the Song Dynasty was going to be destroyed like this, but the man of Song Dynasty's imperial family in the south of China was crowned Song Gaozhong, creating a new capital in Hangzhou and reviving the Song Dynasty. But as the Jin Dynasty of Jurchens took all of China's central and northern regions, revived Song Dynasty was just a half radius. Therefore, the history of the Song Dynasty is divided into Northern Song and Southern Song. Yue Fei, a general in the Southern Song Dynasty, made contribution in battles with the Jin Dynasty to restore the territory of the Old Song Dynasty, but the Yue Fei was removed by the framing of the factions who did not want a war in the Southern Song Dynasty. Yue Fei is one of the most respected generals in China today. Although military power of the Song Dynasty was poor, Song Dynasty achieved remarkable achievements academically and artistically. During the Southern Song Dynasty, Neo-Confucianism was created. Gunpowder, printing, and compasses were also all inventions during the Song Dynasty. Chinggis Khan appeared in the Mongolian steppes of the late 12th and early 13th centuries, uniting the Mongols. An attack by the Mongols led to the fall of the Jin Dynasty in northern China in 1234. Later, Mongolia even pressured Southern Song Dynasty, and in 1276, the capital Hangzhou was captured. The remnants of the Southern Song fought in Guangzhou but were completely suppressed by the Mongols in 1279. Mongols took control of all the Chinese continent, and the Mongols declared the country's name the Yuan Dynasty. During Yuan Dynasty rule over the Chinese continent, Han Chinese were persecuted and suffered by the Mongol Yuan. Han Chinese organized the Red Turban to expel the Yuan Dynasty from China and to restore the Chinese state. Among them, Zhu Yuanzhang from Anhui province united all the other factions of the Red Turbans, making Nanjing the capital in 1368 and became emperor, founding the Ming Dynasty. He was the founder of the Ming Dynasty, Hongwu Emperor of Ming. In 1368, Ming troops succeeded in capturing the Yuan capital, Beijing. Finally, Chinese sent the Mongols over the Great Wall to the Mongolian steppes. After the death of Hongwu Emperor of Ming, as his eldest son died early, his grandson was crowned the second emperor. However, Zhu Li, the fourth son of Emperor Hongwu Emperor of Ming, was dissatisfied with his nephew's crowning. Zhu Li abdicated his nephew and became the third emperor himself in 1402. He was the Yongle Emperor of Ming. In 1421, Yongle Emperor transferred the capital from Nanjing to Beijing, and he built the Forbidden. Yongle Emperor left for Mongolia conquest 5 times for 15 years. Although he was the emperor, he directly participated in the war and commanded the battle. Yongle Emperor also appointed a large number of the eunuchs who helped in his coup. Yongle Emperor, who wanted to expand into the marine world, entrusted his favorite eunuch, Zheng Huo, with the expedition project to lead a huge fleet and go as far as possible through the sea. Eunuch Zheng Huo led a large fleet on a total of 7 expeditions, and he went through the Middle East to Eastern Africa. After the death of Yongle Emperor, the emperor's authority in the Ming Dynasty plummeted as the eunuchs raised. And in the north, the Mongols, who regained power, invaded the northern part of the Ming Dynasty. In order to prevent the Mongol invasion, Ming Dynasty repaired the Great Wall which was built by Qin Shi Huang in the past, and this is today's Great Wall. The Ming Dynasty banned the maritime trade strongly after Yongle Emperor. As a result, contraband traders grew up on the southern eastern coast of China, and they became pirates and naval warlords. Especially, the famous pirate was Wang Zhi, who had nicknamed the Pirate King of the East. Wang Zhi associated with Japanese pirates and seized the Eastern Asian Sea. However, Wang Zhi was eventually arrested and executed by the Ming army. When Wang Zhi, the huge central point of pirates, disappeared, the Japanese pirates lost control and invaded China even more. Qi Ji Guang used a new tactic called Mandarin Duck Formation, suppressing the Japanese pirates. In 1592, Toyotomi Hideyoshi of Japan invaded Joseon and started the Imjin War. Japan's goal was to invade Ming through Joseon, so Ming Dynasty sent reinforcements to Joseon. Ming troops were all from Liaodong armies, which was a force that managed the Jurchens in Manchuria. These troops were in Joseon, Korea for 7 years due to the Imjin War, while Jurchens in Manchuria were united. Nurhaci, who united the Jurchens, declared a country in 1616. The country was named after the Jin Dynasty, the country which Jurchen made in the past, and to distinguish it from the previous Jin Dynasty, Nurhaci's Jin Dynasty is called Later Jin. Ming organized a large army to subdue Nurhaci in Manchuria, but in 1619, Ming troops were defeated at the Battle of Saruhu, which led Ming Dynasty to completely lost control of Manchuria. But the gateway to the Great Wall, Wen Chonghuan from Ming, blocked Nurhaci's army at the Battle of Ningwen. It was his son Hong Taiji who succeeded Nurhaci. Hong Taiji invaded Joseon in 1627 and received a promise not to help the Ming dynasty. Hong Taiji also united the Mongols. Hong Taiji changed the national name from later Jin to Qing dynasty in 1636. Hong Taiji tried to make a breakthrough in the Great Wall that his father Nuruhachi could not achieve, but Hong Taiji died without completing it. In the Shanhai Pass, which was the eastern end of the Great Wall, the Ming general Wu Sangui defended like ironclads. Inside the Ming dynasty, the tax system was ruined by the corrupt politics of the chronic eunuchs, and the people of Ming dynasty became dissatisfied with the Ming government. At this time, a farmer named Li Zhicheng revolted, and as many as 500,000 rebels participated in Li Zhicheng's rebellion. In 1644, Li Zhicheng captured Beijing, the capital of the Ming dynasty. Before the fall of Beijing, Chongzhen Emperor, the last emperor of the Ming dynasty, held a meeting with the court officials, but none of them came. Chongzhen Emperor went to the mountain behind the palace and put his neck on his own. Wu Sangui at the Shanhai Pass opened the door to the Qing dynasty, saying that he could not offer loyalty to the rebels who killed the emperor. The Qing dynasty went down to Beijing and suppressed the rebellion. The Qing dynasty became the new master of China. Later, Qing dynasty controlled the entire Chinese continent and occupied Mongolia, Uyghur, Tibet, and Taiwan, which was even bigger than today's China. The Qing dynasty was very close to trade with the Western countries. Western countries that wanted to pioneer the Asian market were very disappointed with the Qing dynasty. In the Qing dynasty, only one place in Guangzhou allowed trade with the Western countries. Unable to give up tea imports, the British East India Company sold opium to China's Qing black market to make up for the deficit. The Qing government strictly prohibited the trafficking of opium. With the help of the England government, the East India Company, which again had a deficit, started the Opium War in 1840. Fighting with unmodernized weapons and equipment, the Qing dynasty was no match for the modernized England army and signed the Treaty of Nanjing in 1842, which was a modern treaty with Western nations for the first time in East Asia, opening more port cities. About 10 years after the Treaty of Nanjing, a pseudo-religious rebellion called the Taiping Rebellion broke out in the southern part of the Qing dynasty. The Qing army could not suppress the Taiping Rebellion at all, and instead left the Han Chinese such as Zheng Gufuan and his two disciples Li Hongzhang and Zuo Zongtang to suppress the Taiping Rebellion. Starting in 1860, Western troops also joined to suppress the Taiping Rebellion for the protection of Shanghai, where there were many Westerners. At this time, Li Hongzhang was greatly impressed by the modern army of the West. From 1860, the Qing government had three people, Zheng Gufuan, Li Hongzhang, and Zuo Zongtang, who were contributors to the suppression of the Taiping Rebellion, proceed with the modernization reform of the Qing dynasty, the so-called self-strengthening movement. The self-strengthening movement was mainly a movement to modernize the military, technological, and industrial sectors, and there was no political modernization. From the 1870s, Qing dynasty competed with Japan for supremacy over Joseon and Taiwan. In 1884, Qing dynasty was at odds with France over Vietnam's hegemony, and after the defeat of the Sino-French War, Qing dynasty lost Vietnam to France. As a result of the self-strengthening movement, Qing dynasty had three huge fleets: Beiyang Fleet, Nanyang Fleet, and Fujian Fleet. But the Nanyang Fleet and the Fujian Fleet were destroyed during the Sino-French War. Since then, the Qing dynasty had fully supported the Beiyang Fleet, which remained alone, and the Beiyang Fleet's naval power had risen to the 8th place in the world at the time. However, at some point, conservative imperial families in the Qing dynasty, such as Empress Dowager Cixi, squandered state coffers with luxurious living and cut off financial support for the Beiyang Fleet. In 1894, the Qing dynasty fought the first Sino-Japanese war with Japan in Joseon, while all the equipment of Beiyang Fleet was not managed and aging. In 1895, the Qing dynasty was defeated by Japan. With the defeat of the First Sino-Japanese War, the Qing dynasty signed the Treaty of Shimonoseki with Japan, ceding Taiwan and the Liaodong Peninsula to Japan. Yet, Japan had to vomit the Liaodong Peninsula under pressure from Russia. Later, the young Guangxu Emperor tried to carry out a political reform called 100 Days Reform with intellectuals such as Kang Youwei and Liang Jitao to escape from Empress Dowager Cixi, but all failed due to Empress Dowager Cixi's counterattack. Western imperialism countries had taken the interests of the Qing dynasty, and a pseudo-religious group called the Boxers in the Qing dynasty had formed an armed group to terrorize Westerners in Beijing. Shockingly, the Qing imperial family supported the Boxers. In 1900, a coalition of 8 Western countries was deployed to suppress Boxer rebellion. Empress Dowager Cixi of the conservative Qing dynasty decided that promoting modernization more intensely would help the Qing dynasty maintain a stable system, so she carried out large-scale modernization reforms in various fields of politics, society, and economy from 1901. But on the pretext of reform policy, Qing dynasty collected too much tax from the people. In 1908, Guangxu Emperor was poisoned by Empress Dowager Cixi, and in the same year, Empress Dowager Cixi also died. As the new emperor of the Qing dynasty, 3-year-old Puyi was crowned as Xuantong Emperor. In 1911, the Qing cabinet announced a plan to nationalize railways across the country. Railway nationalization was an act of destroying the local economy, and there were a series of movements across the country against railroad nationalization. The Qing dispatched troops to suppress the anti-nationalization movement, but there were many revolutionary youths in the Qing army who rather made uprising inside. Starting with the uprising in Wuchang on October 10, 1911, the uprising spread across the country, declaring independence from the Qing dynasty in various provinces across the country. Sun Yat-sen, a symbol of revolutionary, took advantage of this atmosphere to establish the first republic government in Chinese history. In 1912, Sun Yat-sen finally established Republic of China, which was Han Chinese government, with Nanjing as the capital. This is what we call Xinhai Revolution. The Qing dynasty sent Yuan Shikai, who succeeded Li Hongzhang's Beiyang fleet, and even expanded to Beiyang army to the south to suppress the revolutionaries. But Sun Yat-sen offered Yuan Shikai the presidency of the Republic of China if he helped them. So Yuan Shikai turned his forces back to Beijing, deposed the last emperor, and dissolved the Qing cabinet. Ignoring the terms of holding an inauguration ceremony in Nanjing, Yuan Shikai was arbitrarily sworn in as president in Beijing, organizing a separate government in Beijing based on his Beiyang army. Sun Yat-sen in Nanjing blamed Yuan Shikai. Yuan Shikai was recognized by Japan as the legitimate head of the Republic of China in exchange for transferring control of the Shandong Peninsula to Japan to consolidate his dictatorship. In December 1915, he eventually was crowned emperor. But after so much criticism and backlash, Yuan Shikai voluntarily resigned in March 1916 and died shortly after. Yuan Shikai's Beiyang army was divided into 3 groups after Yuan Shikai's death: Fengtian Province warlord of Jiang Zuolin, Zhili Province warlord of Wu Peifu, and Anhui Province warlord of Dan Qirui. The 3 warlords competed against Sun Yat-sen, who was in Nanjing, criticized all 3 warlords and announced the northern expedition with the task of overthrowing the Beijing government to dismantle the warlords. The Nanjing government was, of course, symbolic, but it didn't have enough military power to deal with the Beijing government consisting of warlords. Sun Yat-sen moved his base to Guangzhou and united with the southern warlords to confront the Beijing government. However, the southern warlords were satisfied with only maintaining the status quo within their sphere of influence, but were not very interested in the northern expedition. So the southern warlords often fought with Sun Yat-sen. At the end of World War I, Japan expanded its influence on China's Shandong Peninsula, and the Chinese condemned the invasion. However, the Beijing government was pro-Japanese. The news of the March 1st movement in colonial Korea in 1990 stimulated China as well, and on May 4, 1919, students from Beijing University staged an anti-Japanese protest movement. May 4th movement spread throughout China, and Sun Yat-sen of Guangzhou, who was greatly influenced by the May 4th movement, formed the Kuomintang on October 10, 1919 to pledge a new start. The Kuomintang was the only political party of the Republic of China, so the Republic of China is also called the Kuomintang government. The May 4th movement also stimulated communism in China, and the Communist Party of China was founded in 1921 with the support of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and the Communist Party of China decided to unite with Sun Yat-sen's Kuomintang government for a solid position in China. Sun Yat-sen also recognized the need for intellectual cooperation to fight the Beijing government and signed the first Kuomintang Communist collaboration in 1924 with the common goal of overthrowing the Beijing government. In 1925, Sun Yat-sen, a symbol of Republic of China, died of liver cancer. Following Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek led the Kuomintang government. Taking over Sun Yat-sen's will, Chiang Kai-shek moved his base back to Nanjing and made the Northern Expedition his top task. But the Communist Party of China put more importance on popularizing communism and tried to obstruct Chiang Kai-shek's Northern Expedition in every way. On April 12, 1927, Chiang Kai-shek mobilized his army in Shanghai to persecute the Communist Party, and the first Kuomintang Communist collaboration broke down. At this time, the Beijing government was at a time when Fengtian Province warlord of Zhang Zhuolin and Zhuili Province warlord of Wu Peifu united to drive out Anhui Province warlord of Dan Qirui and take control of the Beijing government. In 1928, Chiang Kai-shek finally succeeded in toppling Beijing, completing the Northern Expedition. Wu Peifu fled to Sichuan Province and lived there, while Zhang Zhuolin of the Fengtian returned to the Fengtian, where he was based. Many of the troops mobilized by Chiang Kai-shek during the Northern Expedition were also other warlords. After completing the Northern Expedition, Chiang Kai-shek tried to dismantle the warlords through disarmament, but in the process, warlords such as Yan Xishan in Shanxi Province, Feng Yuxiang in the Henan Province, and Li Zhongren in Guangxi Province protested, leading to a huge civil war called the Great War of the Central Plains. With Fengtian warlords in the northeast on the side of Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang, Chiang Kai-shek won the Great War of the Central Plains and was able to clean up the warlords throughout China. Chiang Kai-shek, who organized the warlords through the Great War of the Central Plains, carried out a large-scale communist sweep which is called encirclement campaigns. Chinese Communist Party, which had been forced into a corner for 5 times of encirclement campaigns, went through the Long March around southwest China. In the meantime, Japan had openly shown their ambition to invade mainland China. In 1931, Japan took control of the Manchurian region by the Manchurian Incident. And in 1932, Japan established a puppet government called Manchukuo, crowning Pui the last emperor of the Qing dynasty. In 1933, Japan entered Inner Mongolia through the Battle of Ruha, and in 1935, Japan entered Beijing. The Chinese strongly demanded that the Kuomintang government should stop Japan, but Chiang Kai-shek was only interested in wiping out the Communist Party. In 1935, Chinese Communist Party established their base in Yan'an Shanxi Province after the long march of 9,700 kilometers for 368 days. At that time, the commander of suppressing Chinese Communist Party was Zhang Xiliang. Zhang Xiliang was the son of Zhang Zhuolin, the former head of the Fengtian Province warlord. In 1928, when Chiang Kai-shek overthrew Beijing and completed the Northern Expedition, Zhang Zhuolin, who was occupying Beijing, was returning to the northeastern Manchuria region. Japanese military blew up the train which Zhang Zhuolin was on, and Zhang Zhuolin was killed. After Zhang Zhuolin's death, his son Zhang Xiliang took over Fengtian Province warlord, but unlike his father, he had a friendly relationship with Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang government, such as helping Chiang Kai-shek during Great War of the Central Plains. Zhang Xiliang, who lost all control of Manchuria due to the Japanese invasion, belonged to the Kuomintang government and was deployed to wipe out the Chinese Communist Party under Chiang Kai-shek's direction. However, Zhang Xiliang considered anti-Japanese to be a priority task. On December 12, 1936, when Chiang Kai-shek came to Xi'an, Shanxi Province, where the command of the Chinese Communist Party sweep was located, Zhang Xiliang kidnapped and imprisoned Chiang Kai-shek. Zhang Xiliang convinced Chiang Kai-shek to stop suppressing Chinese Communist Party and engage in anti-Japanese activists. Chiang Kai-shek decided to stop attacking the Chinese Communist Party in the wake of the Xi'an incident. In 1937, Japan started the Second Sino-Japanese War by attacking Beijing and Tianjin in China. Chiang Kai-shek signed the Second Kuomintang Communist Collaboration with Mao Zedong's Chinese Communist Party to get military support from the Soviet Union. Due to the constraints that the supply line was too long to go down from Beijing to the south of mainland China, the Japanese military immediately captured Shanghai in southeastern China to attack Nanjing, the capital of Kuomintang government. After the fall of Nanjing in December 1937, Japanese caused the Nanjing Massacre, which is considered to be one of the most horrific genocide in human history. At least 120,000 to 350,000 people were killed in the Nanjing Massacre, and about 60,000 to 80,000 women suffered terrible deed. The Kuomintang government continued to fight, and eventually the Japanese military suffered serious supply problems. China, on the other hand, was receiving supplies from northern Southeast Asia. In 1941, Japan started the Pacific War and expanded the front lines. Japan couldn't handle all of China, Burma, the Pacific Front, and in 1945, Japan was eventually defeated. As soon as the Second Sino-Japanese War ended, Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang government suppressed the Chinese Communist Party. During the Second Sino-Japanese War, the size of the Chinese Communist Party grew so much that Chiang Kai-shek's operation of the Communist Party was not a repression, but rather a civil war. The United States opposed Chiang Kai-shek's operation of Chinese communists. No matter how much the Cold War structure formed, because it had not been long since World War II ended, the United States was concerned about another war, and there was no certainty that Kuomintang government would win in the event of a civil war. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was giving tremendous supplies to the Chinese Communist Party. Mao Zedong recognized the importance of the region of Manchuria in the northeast and was moving to Manchuria. So the first battle of the Chinese Civil War was in Manchuria in the northeast. For about 52 days from September to November 1948, there was a series of battles throughout the Liaoshen campaign. At the end of October 1948, Changchun City, the capital of Jilin Province, fell, and in early November, Shenyang City, the capital of Liaoning Province, also fell by Chinese Communist Party taking over all of Manchuria. The Chinese Communist Party then fought the Kuomintang government in two directions. One side was Beijing and Tianjin, the other was a direct route to Kuomintang government's capital, Nanjing. Both fronts had been started since November 1948. Of these, the Chinese Communist Party heading for Nanjing fought for 66 days in the Huaihai campaign until January 1949, breaking through the Huaihe River, which was Nanjing's final defense line. The Kuomintang troops in Pingjin campaign also surrendered on January 31, 1949. The Kuomintang army, which suffered too much damage in the Huaihai campaign, was far short of troops to defend the capital Nanjing. Chinese Communist Party army crossed the Yangtze River and captured the capital Nanjing in April 1949. Shanghai fell in May and Guangzhou fell in October. In the meantime, Chinese Communist Party established the People's Republic of China, the present-day Chinese government, on October 1st, with Beijing as its capital. Later in November, the Chinese Communist Party captured Chongqing, which had been fighting until the end. In December, the Chinese Communist Party entered Chengdu in Sichuan province in the southwest, ending the National Civil War with a victory. Chiang Kai-shek ran away to Taiwan. China's first president and also chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong, strengthened his autocratic power. In 1950, Mao Zedong decided to intervene in the Korean War, so a large amount of Chinese troops were sent to Korea. With March of the Chinese army, the front lines of the Korean War became fixed, and in 1953, South Korea and North Korea ended the war by drawing a ceasefire. Since then, Mao Zedong had purged a large number of intellectuals who were critical of the government, calling it an ideological struggle in China. In 1958, Mao Zedong declared a great leap forward that pushed for intensive economic development, as in the case of the Soviet Union in the past. China's Great Leap Forward aimed to overtake England within 7 years by intensively fostering heavy industry. The Chinese government cut down countless trees in the mountains to produce iron with wooden furnaces, leading to a devastating disaster whenever floods and landslides occurred. The quality of the iron produced in that way was very poor. The collective farming that was promoted in the agricultural sector also destroyed China's agricultural economy. 20,000 people's communes across China were corrupt, exploiting farmers to meet their quotas that were given to them and intercepting government subsidies in the middle. There was a great famine in many parts of China, and as many as 30 million Chinese people died of hunger due to the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward in 1958 in China totally failed. China was also in crisis diplomatically. Khrushchev, who became the leader of the Soviet Union after Stalin, criticized Stalin, and Mao Zedong criticized Khrushchev. Khrushchev of the Soviet Union, to some extent, tried to balance the international situation through coexistence with the capitalist camp, while Mao Zedong of China insisted on a blatant rejection of the capitalist camp. The Soviet Union criticized China for being overly doctrinaire, and China criticized Soviet Union for being turned into revisionism. The Sino-Soviet conflict intensified from the 1960s. Mao Zedong, who felt a power crisis following China's economic and diplomatic failure, pushed ahead with a more conservative socialist line, and that was how the Cultural Revolution began. In 1966, Mao organized the Red Guards with millions of students, brainwashed the class and ideological struggles of communist principles, encouraged them to eradicate capitalist remnants and complete the revolution of the proletariat. The indiscriminate attacks of the Red Guards destroyed various cultural assets and artworks, and tens of thousands of artists and intellectuals were killed or attacked. China's society has regressed for decades, with professionals in the economy, education, and healthcare also got removed. It is said that the Cultural Revolution, which lasted for about 10 years until 1976, killed 100 million people and caused about 500 billion yuan in economic losses. Mao died in 1976, and in 1977, Deng Xiaoping drove out Mao's remnants and became the third president. Deng Xiaoping sought to restore China's economy and society. He advocated a pragmatic policy to accept a market economy system to some extent in order to recover China's economy, citing the theory of black cats or white cats only need to catch mice well. In 1979, as a result of so-called ping-pong diplomacy, China and the United States established diplomatic relations and helped ease the Cold War. But Deng Xiaoping still continued his dictatorship. In 1989, Chinese students and intellectuals protested in Tiananmen Square in Beijing's Forbidden City, but Deng Xiaoping violently suppressed civilians by mobilizing tanks. Due to the Tiananmen incident, China is still not democratized, and it remains a dictatorship where the government can interfere with people's privacy. China got returned Hong Kong in 1997 and Macau in 1999. China, which has become an economic powerhouse since 2008, is called the G2 country now, threatening the United States, which had a hard time by the subprime mortgage crisis. Since then, China and the United States have been competing for supremacy, and since 2018, they have been engaged in a trade war. Chinese 3,000-year history was a repeat of the turmoil of warlords and the central government's integration policy to unify them. Will future China repeat the same pattern of history, or is that pattern over now?